Let me ask you, are you lazy or are you crazy? I get a lot of questions about whether or not someone should go to university, if they're going to go to university or not, what should they study, and how should they study using memory techniques. And I think we got to step back from all that and really think about ourselves and think, are we lazy or are we crazy? And you know, if you're joining this live for the first time, you haven't been on a magnetic memory method live before, we're going to cover this issue in some detail, and as people show up they say hello and we can have a bit of Q&A and interaction, and if you're watching the replay you can always discuss below, and make sure you hit the thumbs up. If you're live on the call, let me know where you are in the world and let me know your situation with your studies and what you're doing in university. It's Sunday, so it's a little bit of a relaxed situation, and I was like these Sunday Memory Palace satsangs, so they can go wherever they want to go, and we even got a guitar here today, so that could be fun, and we might play a little music there. But the whole thing is to understand this lazy versus crazy thing. So if you're hopping on in the world, let me know where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and how you're feeling, and you know, your own situation with university. Who am I to give advice about whether you're lazy or crazy to go to university, or if you should be going to university? Well, I've got a PhD, I got 2 M.A.s, got an M.A. in media and philosophy and communications philosophy. I got an M.A. in English, got a B.A. in English, and my PhD of course is in humanities, which covered history of science, history of religion, history of classical world and languages, and I did a lot of stuff on film studies as well in there, and eventually became a film professor. But the important thing is I almost never made it through university, but I did make it through because I'm crazy. But I was not lazy, and I saw a lot of lazy people that were in university. I saw them when I was in my BA, I saw them when I was in my MA number 1, I saw them when I was in my MA number 2, and I saw them all throughout my PhD, and I taught them through my PhD. And there's very, very few crazy people in university, and there's a whole lot of lazy people. And I want to share these ideas with you about these 2 categories, because you could save yourself a lot of pain, you could save yourself thousands upon thousands of dollars if you get this sorted before you invest in university. Because university is a really, really big thing to go into. I know, because I went to the top. If university is a Mount Everest, I went all the way to the top by getting a PhD, and I saw a lot along the way, and it's really coming up to school time, and I just want to help those people who may be, you know, needing some encouragement with this big battle. Because one of the things is, and I heard this on Sam Harris's podcast the other day, where he was talking to people who also have PhDs, and he said, you know, one of our jobs is just to encourage people to come and get a PhD. But by the same token, we need to be realistic, because it's the 21st century, and a lot has changed since I started in university, and I still think it's really, really worth going and doing it. It's actually more than worth it, but if you've got your ideas in order, if you've got it sorted. So let's get that sorted to help as many people as we can to make the best possible decision about it, because there's some real reasons why you should never go to university, for sure, and there's some real reasons why you should. And you don't have to be crazy. This is an acronym. There's dots in between those letters to help us figure out these ideas and sort them out. But let me know if you're hopping on, where you are in the world and how you're doing, and hit that thumbs up to let me know you're engaged. You can hit that thumbs up whether you're here live or on the replay. It's all good. You know, I always like to feature the book that I'm reading too. In this case, I'm rereading Stillness Speaks. If you haven't read this, read it. It's really, really powerful. It is a great tool to have if you're gonna go to university, because you're gonna really benefit from a lot of stillness. I also want to mention that I'm doing a free webinar, the Digital Amnesia Takedown. If you want to join it, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/DATA, data. It's part of this important message about getting yourself on board. Emerson's Coffee, Bike, and Rum Shop says, I love your live shows. I will have to watch the replay as I'm at work. Well, thank you for letting me know you're here. That's always good, and I'm glad you're loving these live shows. It's a beautiful Sunday. It's windy. It's like the windy season in Brisbane, the first time that I'm having it. I like being outside. I'm going to do these outside, but Emerson's Coffee, Bike, and Rum Shop. Wow. Well, I don't drink alcohol, but I like coffee a lot, and I like coffee in really nice, beautiful mugs. And so I hope you have nice, beautiful mugs at your work, and that you're able to drink memory-stimulating materials while you're there. And I'm glad you like these lives. I like doing them, and they're a lot of fun, and I love when people are engaged and hitting those thumbs up and helping direct the direction, because it's Sunday. Just relax, chilling out. Like I said, I got the guitar here. Woo. Maybe we'll play something, maybe we won't. We'll see. I've been thinking a lot about music and memory, especially every time when I speak with my friend John McFedrin. I'm so excited about the things that he's got coming up. But let's get started with this lazy versus crazy. So here are some of the reasons why. I think they're the 4 biggest reasons I can think of why you would never want to go to university. And the first is that you have a loss mentality. That's the L. A loss mentality. That means you're worried in advance that you're never going to actually graduate, or if you graduate, you're never going to get a job. Like, what's the point, and all that sort of stuff. That's not a good foundation to start going to university. It's going to shape everything. And you know, it might be just normal and natural to have that in your mind anyway, but there's a difference between having practical doubt and having some sort of skepticism and seeing the possible outcome that isn't helpful or useful, and actually shaping and leading yourself towards fulfilling an outcome that you don't want, like wish fulfillment and so forth. And if you go in with a sense of loss, which is also like a kind of scarcity, then you're going to shape all this. So I see, and I have seen, so many students go in and they're already worried about debt. They're already worried about the time crunch. They're already worried about all kinds of things. So if you have that loss mentality, that's just stacking the chips against you. Because the truth is, and especially if you get yourself sorted with memory techniques, you have all the time in the world to learn all the things that you need. You also have all the abundance of resources, because there's scholarships, there are jobs that you can get that actually help you do better with your studies. So you can look for internships, you can look for all kinds of things that will support you. A lot of people, they go in with a loss mentality. Oh, well, I have to go and work at McDonald's. Not that there's anything wrong with working at McDonald's, but they go and put themselves in positions just to get by that are actually against their success. So they're running around harried, and I'll never forget when I was in the 4th year university course on Ezra Pound's cantos. It was a very, very dedicated, devoted seminar studying Ezra Pound's cantos, which has so much to do with memory. If you're interested in memory as a larger topic, you got to read the cantos, and you got to read about Ezra Pound. There's so many good books about his life, and it's just, he had an abundance mentality. Okay, so the guy went a little nuts, right? But he really, really thought in many, many ways that we have more than enough. If we could just figure out how to spread it around and how to get things flourishing, right, we would have more than enough. And he had some pretty weird ideas about that, but if you just take the energy and you take the enthusiasm and you take the philosophy behind it, then you'll really understand that you have more than enough, and you can go and you can find work that actually will encourage you and help you flourish and nourish your studies instead of taking away from it. But if you're in there and you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to have 3, 4 part-time jobs, that's a lost mentality. And when I was in university, when I was in 2nd year of university, I had 3 jobs in order to pay for 1 course. That course was a 2nd year political science course, and I was so hellbound on getting through university that's what I did to make it work at this one particular year. And only one of those jobs directly at that time fueled my actual knowledge, right? Although when I look back, that was all fundamental, because I had a job at the public library. This is in Prince George, British Columbia, one of the coldest places you'll ever visit in your life. Although I've been farther north than that and spent some time farther north than that, and it does get colder than Prince George, and the snow gets higher and deeper. But man, that was just the greatest job. And I deliberately sought out library jobs, and I'd had library jobs at my previous university where I did my 1st year. And one of the reasons why that job was so appropriate is because you're actually learning the library, right? And when you learn the library, you learn so much about knowledge, and you actually can sneak in some study while you're shelving books, while you're shelf reading, while you're doing some of the other things that are involved. I mean, at that particular case, because of the union, I wasn't able to answer any questions, even though I would know exactly where things were in the library. I would have to still say, well, you'll need to ask the librarian about that, and even take them by the hand over to the librarian. And I would, in order to help me know more about the library, I would repeat the question for them. It wasn't required of me to actually take them to the librarian, but I would do that to help get more knowledge and hear what the librarian would say. I actually studied certification for becoming a proper librarian, a research librarian, and I passed the test really quickly because I took it upon myself to actually do this when I was working at a librarian. But the whole point, I was a page, as it was called, at this particular library job, and it was just, the point being is that it was a job that supported my studies. It made my studying possible. The other thing is that it was at that job that I discovered audiobooks, and I got to borrow more books because I was working there than the normal citizen could do, so I would hoard them up. Now, in order to make more money to support this, so that I didn't have to have this loss attitude, this fear, which is the L of lazy, what I did is I wound up getting a job as a janitor in a movie theater. And in that movie theater job, what happened was I would listen to the audiobooks. So basically the library would close at 9 p.m. I'd be there till about 9:45 or so to do the final cleanup, do the final shelving of the books, or at least you would put the books that you didn't have time to shelve in order, so that the next person coming the next day would push the books and already have them ordered on the trays, or on the trolleys, in order to more quickly shelve them. So you do that. Anyway, then I would go to the movie theater where I was a janitor and wait for the movie theater to close at about midnight, or 12:30 would be the last showing, and I would read books. I would read what I was supposed to be doing for my course, my one course that I could afford to take. And you know, odd times I would pop in and watch movies. This was when Titanic was in the movie theater. I watched that boat sink, it must have been 45, 50 times, because I'd go and watch it sink, and it was in the theater for forever. Anyway, then I would clean the theater and I would listen to the audiobooks. I'd sometimes listen to Brave New Waves. If you're Canadian and you're around my age, you'd probably remember Brave New Waves. And that was very, very culturally enlightening as well, but it used to scare me too, because I'd be all alone in this movie theater, and sometimes they played really weird, progressive, strange, experimental music. By the way, we're gonna have a Q&A. If you all guys want to post anything, comments or whatever, I appreciate your engagement, and hit that thumbs up to let me know you're engaged and enjoying this. Back to story time. The point is that at that time, that job was actually not very good for my studies, but looking back, it was very good because I used the time to listen to all these audiobooks, but it destroyed my sleep and led to a bad pattern that I really suffered from over the years, because I developed the bad habit of staying up all night. And because of the deep snow in the winter cold and all that, I would have to actually sleep in the room in the room for employees on the couch until that a bus would start up so that I could take the bus home. And anyway, there's a lot more details to that, but after the fact I can see how that job served my studies, but during the time it was actually against my studies. But the other thing too is I worked in a photo lab a couple times a week, and that just taught me a lot about processing film and things like that, and I can't see a distinct link. But the point is if I'd known more, I would have found more jobs that served my actual goal of study. So you can, but if you go in with a lost mentality and you're just like, I need to fund this, I'll just get any old job, then that's going to lead to a poorer outcome than if you have a abundance mentality that there are jobs that can serve you, internships, you can get scholarships, you can. Even if I were to go to university again, I would go to my professors and see how that I might be able to get a research assistant position, even though I wasn't in the master's degree yet, where that would open up. And there might be a way, there's always a way, but you can find a way to serve you. Because I did have research positions later, and they're so good for actually fueling your studies. for actually teaching you to study better. Even if you're not studying for yourself, you're studying the study of study, which then makes you a better scholar, and it makes you a better author because you're reading a lot, and then you might be writing summaries for the person that you're doing research for, and so forth. So the L of lazy, which is the reason why you might not want to go to university, and of course the reasons why you would want to go to university are included in all of the reasons why you wouldn't want to go to university. L means loss mentality. A loss mentality can be combated many ways, but it's by having an abundance mentality and just saying there is a way for getting sufficient amount to fuel the actual financial needs of a course of study, but also a way to fuel the intellectual needs of a course of study. So if you have a loss mentality and you think that there might be other ways for you to fulfill your life, then go for that. But going to university with a loss mentality, it will, it'll cramp you up. You don't need it. There's so many other things that you can do. So the A in lazy is attitude check, and it's sort of related, but it's not the same thing, because your attitude towards what you're doing is everything. So you want to have the attitude of, any professor who you don't like, have the attitude of loving that professor anyway, because everything's a frame. Every class is a frame, and you enter the frame and it's a bit theatrical, and there are players there, and everything that you do in response to what happens in that classroom, there's a response back. And some professors are just downright not going to gel with you. Some professors are going to gel with you almost too much, so that enthusiasm can run you dry. And you've got to always check your attitude and make sure that it's in balance, so that you're not just focusing way too much on one professor's amazing ideas that they're just rattling out at you all the time, and that you need to follow up on every book that they mention and so forth, which is a great thing to do. I mean, I did this a lot, but you got to keep it in check. And then likewise, I've had professors who just seemed hell-bent on failing me and failing other people, and it's not a nice situation to be in. So you've got to have self-measuring attitude checks and make sure that you're not actually being negatively impacted by the things that teachers say. I have sat in lecture halls multiple times where professors have said, in different ways, the majority of you in this room are going to fail. You're all going to, it's going to be the first round of exams, and most of you, or a certain percent of you, will have dropped out. Wow, like if you aren't able to filter out the garbage that people like that are going to say to you, that's going to be very, very difficult. So you want to go into university with an attitude check and an ability to check the attitudes of others. Pablo says, hello Anthony, I just subscribed to your webinar. Thanks for sharing. Well, Pablo, thanks so much. And here's the link for anybody who wants to subscribe for my digital amnesia takedown, magneticmemorymethod.com/data. And love to have you on the call. By the way, we're celebrating the 5th year anniversary of the magnetic memory method full-time. My little online university of memory. It's a university of memory that's very different than an institutional university, but one day I got the talk from my dissertation supervisor, and he was telling me about how hard it was going to be to get a job. This is part of the attitude check. Ivan says, congratulations. Thank you, Ivan. I really appreciate it. It's a wild ride doing your own thing, having your own university, but I really think a lot about the ancient Greeks. I studied the ancient Greeks intensively. The people who just got out there on the streets and they taught their philosophy, they taught what they knew. They did whatever it took to get things taught, and you see that a lot on the internet. I'm not alone. The 21st century digital online professor, we're taking the reins in our own hand rather than giving all the power to universities, because there's a problem with universities actually. I mean, they're telling you still that you can get a job at the end of the day while you're paying them massive sums of money, and they're not even really giving you the best possible professors, because they're hiring people based on policies that are still based in the Victorian era, right? And it's really odd. It's odd. And the odd time I still apply for professorships, but I never get them, and I always think, how is this possible? Who could be more qualified than myself? And usually it's because, and I'm generalizing, but I think it's a very, very a very important truth that must be told is that usually they've decided who they're going to hire before that they post the job. The job posting is made only because the law requires that a job posting is made, but a lot of people are running around like crazy, dumping hours of their time into creating applications for jobs that don't actually exist. It's just a formality that it's been posted in the first place. Now again, I don't want to say that this is for every single job, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of those job postings, those people who are waiting to be wowed by some perfect candidate that will knock the person that they actually already have decided they're going to hire in advance out of the water. But at the end of the day, I think they usually pretty much hire the person they invited to apply, and they put that job application up only as a formality. So there's a kind of strange logic we need to balance when we apply for such jobs. But again, I'm talking here too, right? Like, do I have lost mentality there? And I question, and when a new position comes up, and it seems like it's cool, I apply for it. Why not? I mean, why not? So I battle my own lost mentality, right? Because it would be cool to teach at a university again. I think it would help me grow my own little online university as well, and really help students learn, especially if it was in digital media communications and so forth, which I am fully qualified to teach because I have an M.A. in communications and media philosophy. So why not? In any case, the point is that you've got to check your attitude all the time, as do I, and I practice this a lot and think about how you always have to check your attitude. And back to that story in the lecture halls, I always found it very, very discomforting and uncomfortable when professors would say things like, X% of you will be out of here by the first round of exams. And I just think, how do you know this? And well, one of the reasons that they know it is because they've been teaching for years and years and years, and they know the retention rates. And you'll see, and I've seen it as a professor myself, you'll start off the room with 500 people in a lecture hall, and by the end you'll have 8 to 10% of them left. And so I guess that must be disheartening for the professors. However, imagine a world where the professors say something different. They tell the students a different story, like the story I'm telling you right now. If you have a right attitude, if you have an attitude of abundance, if you have an attitude of, you know what, I'm going to have a little bit of a BS filter when people tell me that I'm going to fail, and just like try and get that away from me quick, because that's a negative attitude. I'm going to have a positive attitude instead. If professors actually said, you know what, like Steve Jobs would say and did say at a convocation speech, you're going to die one of these days, and if you're going to be here, be all in, right? If professors would say that, do you think more people might stick around? Instead of scaring the crap out of most people, giving a prediction that everybody can fulfill, that they burrow into their unconscious minds and a percentage of them make true? Yeah, sure, some people can't complete a course of study, no problem, but you don't need to point it out. You could point out something different. You could point out a different message. The message is that now is the most important time in the world. You have more than enough time if you learn how to structure your time. Universities should, and often do, have time planning courses that help people plan and structure their day. And if you just submit yourself to a bit of discipline, you get some disciplinary training, which, I've got lots of material at magneticmemorymethod.com that will help you have all kinds of discipline in your life. It's pretty simple. You just get something like the Mastery Journal, which I use. Discipline a lot of the time is just the discipline of allowing something to guide you in your disciplinary measures and needs. It's not rocket science. So get that in order and have the right attitude about it. Have the attitude that you can live the life you want, you can study the things you want to study, and you don't have to succumb to all these negative things, because you're going to have laziness forced on you if you have a lost mentality and you don't have an attitude check. The other thing is the Z here, or the Z, depending which country you're from or where you're in, and that's being zoned out. I think it's a waste of time if you're going to be zoned out in your computer all the time, and you're going to succumb to digital amnesia, which is part of my digital amnesia takedown. If you want to be on this free webinar, 5th year anniversary of the Magnetic Memory Method full-time, for me as a gig, magneticmemorymethod.com/data, D-A-T-A. Register, be on that call. I'm giving away a free book, actually, free audio book and PDF, so it's going to help you keep your mind sharp. It's actually called How to Keep Your Mind Sharp, even if you're 90. And the audiobook is cool. It's professionally read, and you're going to have a great time. Corpus is here. He says, "Hi, Anthony. I don't get the point of university because of online media, textbooks, and memory techniques, or offline in the form of endless OS." I'm not sure what you mean by OS, but there is a point to university, and I'm going to share what I think is the point of university. And one of the points of university really is that it's a great way of getting a course of study so that you don't have to do it all on your own. You know, I do courses of study now all on my own all the time, and I sometimes think, wow, wouldn't it be great if someone put a course together for me on the things that I want to study so I could learn from them. But the things that I want to study, they don't have courses for, or I haven't found them, so I need to put them together. That's what professors do in many ways when they have a job and they're free, you know, if they have tenure and so forth. They think, what is it that's going to enrich me, make me a better human, and then turn that into a course for others. So one of the things I'm doing personally is studying the great M.A.s, you know, and making courses based around what they did historically, trying to understand their techniques. That's why I'm translating Matteo Ricci's C.R.A.Z.Y from Chinese right now, and it's why that I'm doing studies into Giordano Bruno, with the intention of making a course around that. So I'm learning what I think is going to make me a better mnemonist, a better user of memory techniques, a better teacher of memory techniques, a better historian of memory techniques, a better theorist of memory techniques, a better practitioner of memory techniques, and then turn it into a course of study for you. And that's a value, that's a point for going to university. So I really appreciate that angle, but it's one reason to understand why going to university is good, is because when you can find good professors, and there are very good professors out there, they will give you their passion, they will give you their knowledge, and they will give you the course of study that they crafted for themselves in order to explain to others what's so great about that. And if you can harness on to some of their energy, it's the way to escape from the lazy and get in with the crazy. So we're going to get to the crazy. But again, if you're hopping on, please say hello. Let me know where you are. Hit that thumbs up to let me know you're engaged, and come on over to magneticmemorymethod.com/data for the free webinar. The registration times are there, and you'll see that actually time to register is running out. So please make sure that you're on so that we can have this together. We're going to take down digital amnesia. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to give you some ways to focus, some techniques for language learning, some techniques for study, so that you can have an amazing memory and amazing concentration and focus, and really get the things done that you want to get done, and have some discipline. It's really important. But that Z or Z, depending where in the world you are and how you use English, is this problem that people have, is they're zoned out in their machines, they're zoned out in their apps. If you want to concentrate and have the kinds of concentration that will enable you to really get the top grades, get through university, you've got to get balance with the apps in your life. You've got to get balance with the devices in your life, and you've got to stop training yourself to respond to them. I can't tell you how many times I'm with people and it's just like buzz, check, buzz, check. They can hardly have a conversation, you know? And it's really sad. And people wonder, oh, well, I can't concentrate at school. I don't know how to read a book. I get bored after 2 sentences. Of course you do. Everything that you do is locked in an app, locked in a device, and it's got constant notifications. You've got to practice some kind of digital fasting and stop being zoned out, which is our Z here, into these machines that are always trying to harness your attention. You got to stop watching these videos and succumbing to the fantasy that you're actually going to learn from 2 minutes of content, or 3 minutes of content, or 6 minutes of content. You're not. You're going to learn from practicing extended concentration, processing thoughts. It's why I made the podcast about, you know, my unconventional note-taking techniques, which is at magneticmemorymethod.com, note-taking. I think I memorized that URL correctly. And you know, but just search for it and understand these things. They're really super important. Nobody's telling the truth of this. Everybody keeps telling the negative story about how your attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Well, it might be, but if it is and you're feeling the crunch, the responsibility is on you, right? Because you've got to take the power. You've got to harness what you want out of life, and you've got to understand the problem of digital amnesia. That problem of digital amnesia is not being created by the internet. It's not being created by the apps. It's not being created by the devices. It's being created by how you choose to use them, how you choose to interact with them. And you can make an alternative choice, and you can tell yourself a better story. Instead of, oh, my attention span is being zapped, you can tell yourself the story of, I am doing something to stop my attention span from being zapped. On magneticmemorymethod.com/digital-amnesia, I am teaching you there how to get over this, how to stop this. Digital fasting. Bis says, I'm on it, Anthony. Thanks for everything. Peace from Morocco. All right. Good. Well, do something about it, because the people who are going to have the best in life are always going to be the ones who are the most educated. And part of being the most educated is developing your ability to concentrate. And one of the best ways that you can develop your ability to concentrate is get control over notifications. Get control over the extent of your attention span. This is one of the scariest things in the world, and people are almost gleefully bragging about how short their attention span is. I remember the third year of my, no, it was the second year of my being a teaching assistant at university, and someone bragging about how they had never read a book. Can you imagine someone bragging about having never read a book? This is insane. That's insanity. And she had come to university where she was doomed to read not just books, but articles and big fat things, and sit through 45-minute, hour-long, 90-minute lectures, you know? And that's nothing to brag about, actually. And the fact that it's just normal, this is sad. This is sad. I mean, knowledge is going to continue to require depth of analysis, depth of study, depth of exposure, not this twitchy culture. So this is going to make you lazy. You're going to get lazy. You're going to, if you are zoning out into constant notification, and you're blaming the machines and not taking responsibility for yourself, then this is going to create the laziness. That means you might as well really not bother with university, because if you want to be on top of university, you got to have discipline. You got to really, really settle in and master your concentration. And you master it one way is just by removing notifications, removing anything that's shortening your attention span. And you can. And all you have to do is make a choice. And that's what we're going to be talking about on my Digital Amnesia Takedown webinar. So if you want to register for that, the time to register is quickly running out. Go to magneticmemorymethod.com/data, D-A-T-A. And you know, there's a reason why I'm doing this, not digitally, is because there's something really real about having real things. That's why I use this, not the PDF, you know, because it's real. And it's real means a lot of different things. There's depth. I actually know what page I'm on. I can think about how far through I'm in, you know. You can't do that on a PDF. Oh, well, where's halfway through? Scroll, 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 scroll. Oh, as a new notification comes in, new email, and so forth. Speaking of email, I wanted to share with you this one that I got today, which I'm not being distracted from, but I'm pretty good, and I practice not being distracted, but I did have this here open because I wanted to share it with you. Should have printed it out, actually. But this is from someone named John, who says, Anthony, I can't thank you enough for aggregating all your mnemonic wisdom onto the web. I've used your magnetic memory method and other memory tips to memorize 1,000 advanced graduate record exam, GRE words, and their meanings into 12 memory palaces. 12 memory palaces, 1,000 GRE words. Isn't that amazing? John, I congratulate you deeply, but I congratulate you because you took action and you did this. So incredible. He says, I was tired of running into fancy words and having no clue. In my graduate studies, I was tired of running into fancy words and having no clue. I can now pluck interesting and relevant words from my memory palaces as I write academic papers. Listen to that, as I write. You don't have to go and consult anything. You don't have to look it up on the dictionary. As you write. This is a great, great thing. I can now pluck interesting and relevant words. Think of that, pluck. It's like, you know, Zen archery. You've got all these words and you just, you're writing and you just, bam, bam. Corpus says cool. Yes, it is very cool. It's the feeling that I've always had. You know, people have laughed at me, oh yeah, memorize a dictionary. Come on, like, why would you ever do this? This is the reason why. It's because when you need a word, boom, Zen archery of expression. Same thing with any language you're learning. I'll take all the laughter in the world, but people, some of the best people in the world have seen the wisdom of it. I mean, Dr. Yip, he memorized a dictionary and so forth. But then you see the relationships between words as well, and then you learn more about natural order and structure that has been put there for you. It's a free resource. It's incredible. So whatever that list of words is, there's tremendous value in it. And I love that word, John. Pluck. Interesting and relevant words. It is the Zen archery of writing. And he says, I've since alphabetized about half of it. It's extra handy for poetry, he says. Your tips, like not focusing on the details of your stations so much as seeing microstations as geometric points and moving linearly, were huge helps. Of course, because of the unexpected success I had, I'm addicted to location-based memory techniques now, and I'm working toward building a more complete system for learning multiple subjects, multifarious subjects, he puts here. If there was an obstacle I had to get over most, it would be encoding with the right balance of what's both memorable, interesting, and logical/meaningful. It's tricky learning to trust some of the ridiculous and unserious associations that your brain makes. Well, it's tricky only to the extent that you're not practicing as much as you could or should. So, John, thank you for that email. I really appreciate it, and you've really nailed it down. It is this, and I've used the Zen archery method metaphor before many times, and it sort of relates to what I've been reading in Stillness Speaks, and my favorite, quote from Bruce Lee: "No ego, no enemy." If you just get yourself out of the way and you don't overthink it too much, that's where you get to enjoy the craziness of it all, and you get rid of the lazy. So part of that, as John is saying here, is, can you imagine 1,000 words in just 12 memory palaces? Well, I can. I know lots of people who have done it, and they've done it real fast. And it's partly because they've got this lazy equation out of their lives. So many people have fear of loss. They have some kind of scarcity. So many people have the wrong attitude about their brain. They think their brain is somehow different than everybody else's and doesn't follow the fundamental rules of memory and the principles of memory. And they have the attitude that it won't work for them. It must work for you. If you want to look up my podcast on why skepticism is one of the best things for you, then please do. You can just search magnetic memory method and skepticism. It's got a longer URL structure, so that's probably the best way. There's a search function on magnetic memory method that you can check out. The point being is that skepticism is not an excuse. Skepticism is your greatest resource. Atoll is here, 301086. He says, "Hi, I have a Kindle. I like to have several books available without having to carry too much. Is it okay? Or should I try to take the books? Greetings from Mexico." Well, thank you for that question. That's actually a very good question. The Kindle debate, I think that we need more research, but the research so far is that if you want to remember at your highest possible level, then read from real books. There's a number of reasons why that people in the research are discovering, the scientists are discovering this, and the actual readers themselves, and they're just not remembering as much from the Kindle. And I think one of the reasons is spatial. You can't actually know where in the book something was, right? Now, to be fair, there are other people who tell me, and people I really trust and admire, that they can speed read from digital books just as well and remember just as much, but they're very practiced at those techniques. So I don't think that it's a right or wrong question here, but it's a question of you knowing you and really knowing the difference, because I know the difference, and I know I loved Kindle too for years, and there's still some aspects of it, but I don't read anymore from Kindle because I've just noticed that not only do I not even know where my books are, yes, there's a search function and so forth, but there's a real difference between being able to go to the shelf, pick up a book, and know where all your library is. And that maybe comes from my tradition of being a librarian, but the whole thing is that there's something spatial that's lacking from the Kindle device or any other digital library. There's something spatial, there's something materially spatial that's missing from it, and our location-based memory is so profound that it's starved of that. And it's the same thing with where in books things are happening. Bad Boss says, hello, hello, Bad Boss. So glad that you're here. Really, really appreciate seeing your name all the time. And it's so fantastic. And I'm curious what you think about spatial memory and real books. Bad Boss says, very interested in this topic. It is an interesting topic. I think it's one of the most important topics in the world, so the replay will be available. Sometimes I pull these, but this one I think I'll keep on. And by the way, Baba, doing a free webinar later this week. If you want to register, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/data. It's the digital amnesia takedown. We'll be talking more about this. But the answer to the question of should you be reading real books, I really strongly would motivate you to do so, for the fact that you can just read them differently too. So there's something that I teach in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass called bibliomancy, and it's my version of speed reading. I've never wanted to put it together a speed reading course because it just works so well for people in the masterclass. So, you know, why do a speed reading course? And it's not really speed reading. It's how to realistically memorize entire books and memorize them realistically. So I'm not talking about memorizing entire books verbatim. You've probably heard my take on that. I really don't see it as a good use of time. I don't see it as a good waste of time either. But and some people have said that I'm quite unfair about that, but there are reasons why you might want to memorize a whole book from beginning to end, and fair enough. I mean, if I was going to pick a book that I wanted to memorize from beginning to end, I would. Christian says, no buffering on real books. Love your books, building palaces every day. Well, Christian, thank you so much for saying that. I'm glad that you got some of my books. I really appreciate hearing that, and thanks for your support of this work. And I'm glad that you're creating memory palaces. It is a fundamental activity. I got I don't know if you were on the last live, but I showed you guys just, this silly, goofy memory palace painting. This is an actual memory palace. It took a while, but it doesn't need to take that long. Just a couple of minutes, actually, or even seconds to draw one by hand. But I wanted to experiment making a memory palace with pastels, which I'd never done before. I also like to practice artistry and so forth, and it was cool to do something different, represented a little bit different. These colors all represent things. If you didn't check out that live, you'll hear me excavating my memory. Michael Swain's here. Hey, thanks for popping in, Michael. Great to see your name. Got your email. Going to be sending that off to you soon, and glad that got that sorted. Mystic says, I don't like drawing. Will I still be good with memory palaces? I'd rather make lists with Evernote. Well, Mystic, look, I'm not here to judge how people do stuff, but what I am here to say is that you've absolutely, you deserve the ability to feel the distinction for yourself, and you deserve the opportunity to come to like drawing. And I didn't like drawing either, okay? And when I wanted to learn these techniques, I kept wondering, why is this not working as well as it should? All of the great masters are saying that it should work this way. I mean, it worked better than it should have by rights the first time that I used memory techniques. But as I got deeper and deeper into it, and I wanted it to work better and better and better, I had all these questions. This is the genesis of the magnetic memory method, is answering my questions about these techniques and how I can make them better. And one of the things that I realized is that I don't really see pictures in my head. I don't really have a visual memory as such, so how could I get one? And how could I make my memory palaces faster, not dump all this time into creating them that was taking so long? And how could I just, points in space, like John here from this email, if you didn't catch it, if you're just catching on, and by the way, thanks for letting me know that you're here, and thanks for all the thumbs up to let me know you're engaged. We'll get back to our lazy versus crazy thing here. But he memorized 1,000 words in 12 memory palaces, and he points out that this tip about not seeing the memory palace changed everything for him. But how do you get there? Well, drawing is one of them. So I'm not going to say, do it this way or that way, but if you want to do the magnetic memory method, that's how it's done. That is what makes it magnetic. If you're missing these elements, you're not doing the magnetic memory method, and you're not going to get those kinds of benefits. Although, hey, you might be able to arrive at them independently. But one of the reasons why you take a course of study is in order to learn what you don't need to be doing and go straight to the goal. Because a lot of people, they go like this and they go like that, and then maybe they get there, or they get into lost mentality, their attitude sinks, they start zoning out in other things, and they're never getting there. That's called the crabs in the bucket effect, with yourself. There's crabs in the bucket effect with others, and then there's crabs in the bucket effect with yourself. And if you just keep zoning out, oh, maybe this will help me, maybe that'll help me, maybe if I add this app, that'll help me. That's just going to give you the crabs in the bucket effect, and you're never going to get there. But if you just take one course of study, and that's what I did. First time I learned memory techniques, I just did the one thing all the way through, applied and practiced. But then I needed to refine and go deeper. And so why the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass is the masterclass that it is, why it goes through everything the way that it does, step by step by step for all the different topics, not treating names as the same as numbers, not treating numbers as the same as poetry, not teaching poetry as the same as foreign language vocabulary, not even taking vocabulary is the same as phrases, but going through these things so that you can really, really, really develop, like John has, 1,000 words into 12 palaces if you want. And there was Eldon Clem with his 1,000 words in 6 weeks in ancient Ethiopic. These are incredible results, and there's a reason why those results are there. The reasons are all grounded in science. They're grounded in the ancient tradition of memory, and they're grounded in the new revision of all this stuff called the Magnetic Memory Method. So if you want these things, they're there for you. And free webinar, magneticmemorymethod.com/data, D-A-T-A. We're going to go through, it's the 5th year anniversary of the Magnetic Memory Method as full-time online university for me. Well, actually it was not, this is the 5th year anniversary of me doing this full-time. It started with books, then I went to video courses, and then we did some live things all around the world, and continue doing that kind of stuff, and just really helping as many people as possible. And I'm so honored and grateful that it's been possible, and that it's been possible because of the results that it got for me and that it gets for other people. And when I first started teaching this, and I saw the lights up in the students' eyes, I saw them reciting the alphabet inside of 4 minutes, and I saw them memorizing cards. Some of the students didn't even really have familiarity with cards, and they were still recalling a quarter of the deck within a 45-minute session. And they're just like, oh my goodness, you have to write this down. You have to write this down. I was like, yeah, sure, write it down. That became a best-selling book that was a bestseller for 6 months. It was number 1 in 2 categories and number 3 in another category, and it just stayed there into this day. It's just like going and going and going and going. It's in a 2nd edition now, that book. It's just wonderful. It's wonderful. And by the way, if you're not registered for this, I'm giving away a free ebook and audiobook for attendees. So go to magneticmemorymethod.com/data, get yourself registered, be part of this movement. Be part of this movement. Help me, help you, continue helping you, and help the world, because this is a beautiful tradition, and it is the cure for laziness, and it will get you. I'm thinking a lot about Steve Jobs and that thing, they just say, like, the people who changed the world. Mystic said, I signed up for the webinar. Thank you, Mystic. I can't wait to meet you there. The people who change the world, are the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can do it. That's why you go to university, because you're crazy enough to think that you can change the world, make the world a better place, make it better for your life, for you, your family, and then scale out from there. Scale out for all of society. The ripple effect is real. The butterfly effect is real. You being a better version of yourself will affect everything. It will improve everything. You might not feel it all the time, but it will. The best thing that we can each do individually is better ourselves. Mystic says, are you going to teach everyone about memory palaces and stuff? Yes, I am. And you're going to want to be on this in order to get the free ebook and the free audiobook I'm giving. So go to magneticmemorymethod.com/data to claim this and to be on the call for attendees. The registration is going to close down, so make sure you're registered. This is going to be a great training. You'll learn about memory palaces, you'll learn about concentration, you'll learn about focus, you'll learn how to go from lazy to crazy, which means change the world level, but improve yourself, right? Improve yourself first so that you can improve others, so you can help others. This is part of the secret, right? Because they always got to call it a secret. But it's not that secret. Steve Jobs says it so well. You're going to die one day, right? And when you know that you're going to die one day, then you really get a fire under your backside, and you really, really get out there and you do the best that you can every single day. You have yearning, and that's what the why is in L.A.Z.Y, is that you might not want to go to university because you're yearning for something that university doesn't have, right? So if you wanted to become a master coder, right, you might want to think, okay, so I go and take computer science. Do I have to do it at university? Do I have to get into thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of debt in order to learn coding? Or could I do an independent course of study and become an apprentice to someone, you know, which doesn't necessarily mean working for free, but could I go and apprentice with someone and learn coding really well without any of that? If you're yearning for something, there might be a more direct line than going to university. University has its benefits. We're going to talk about them. They're the crazy benefits. But if you go there for the wrong reasons, then you're going to have laziness enforced upon you. It's going to be imposed on you. So it's really important not to be lazy. Mystic asks, do I draw all my own memory palaces? You know, rarely I will use a memory palace that I haven't drawn, which is when I'm using different techniques. Like I'll just go into a room and just be like, bam, this is a memory palace. I do a certain procedure in my mind, which I'm having to teach in the master class. It's really fast, but then later I'll often draw out that memory palace. So it would be incorrect to say that I've drawn out every single memory palace that I have or have used. You know, there are places where I've gone and given a public talk, and I used that place as a memory palace right then and there to memorize the names of all the people, named them all from the stage, and, you know, done the stunts that everybody does. And I often worry about these stunts, you know, because a lot of people then they're like, oh, I could never do that. They absolutely can, but showing off is just kind of makes them feel, it's like watching, you know, Schwarzenegger pose on the stage, and you just think, oh, I could never do that. And Schwarzenegger will be the first person to say, yes, you can. But there's something intimidating about it, I think. So the demonstrations are, I don't know, I have reserved feelings about them. And, you know, I don't treat this as a sport. I treat this as an art and a science that can improve you so that you can improve the world. And it's really important. But I do draw most of my memory palaces one way or another, and now I've started to like do more artsy memory palaces. Woohoo! And this is kind of, oh yeah, Mystic says, or a martial art. Memory techniques to me really are a kind of martial art. That's true. And I've said that a lot, but I've started to, you know, just doing like representational things, and if you didn't catch that live and you want to, you'll see how I'm using this process to unpack all kinds of memories that I never thought of before, which led to more memory palaces that I never thought of before, and it made more associations. And then it helps with visual memory, it helps with episodic memory, it helps with semantic memory, it helps with all kinds of memory. And while I'm doing this, like, you know, I'm doing these live calls and stuff, and I'm also experimenting and experiencing what it's like to juggle short-term and long-term memory at the same time while doing output. So it's like input, encoding this or that, and just, it's a really interesting thing. I'm training my mental clarity. I haven't lectured, quote-unquote lectured, for years. Not that this is lecture, this is YouTube Live. I don't know, maybe there's a new name for it. But when I used to lecture, that was a certain memory demand, and it atrophied because I don't have a lecture hall anymore, right? So now I do. You're here, thank you for being here, and it's a lot of fun. Let's see, let's catch up on some comments here. So anyway, Mystic, I hope that answers your question. I do draw the majority of them and represent them in different ways, but you don't have to. You can, when you learn these skills and you get real good at them, you can walk into a place, instant memory palace, use it, never use it again if you don't want to. Or you can use it multiple times for the rest of your life. Corporate says, hey Anthony, memory techniques improve focus. In Pennsylvania, they teach memory techniques as a sport to improve focus. Well, yeah, a lot of people engage in memory techniques as a sport. And it is, as Mystic pointed out, a form of martial arts. It really is a kind of martial art, and I often think of that great principle that, you know, we should be like a samurai who's prepared to execute one last move, even with our head cut off, which is how I think of memory techniques. Because, you know, and I've talked with Nelson Dellis about this, I've talked with everybody about this who uses memory techniques. If you aren't using them in your everyday life, then you're just going to have the memory that everybody else has in the way, well, actually your memory, you're going to have some advantage always because of the mental clarity that it brings, because of the focus it brings. You're always going to have this sort of advantage. But you'd be like a samurai without a sword. So you're not going to be doing the samurai level stuff, because samurais, in order to do samurai level stuff, need samurai swords, right? So if you're not using the memory techniques, you're not going to get that kind of advantage. But you should be like the samurai who is always prepared to execute one last move, even with your head cut off. And that's why practicing your memory techniques, being aware that you have them, using them in real life locations frequently keeps your sword sharp, keeps you sharp. And it prevents laziness, because when you know your memory is working, you never have the fear of loss. You never have the fear of missing out. You never have the fear of scarcity and so forth. Your attitude is always in good check. You're not zoning out into apps all the time. And you are yearning for the correct things, the things that are going to make your life and the lives of others around you better, right? This is really, really super important. So that's the why in L.A.Z.Y, is that one reason not to go to university is you may be yearning for something that universities can't give. And so you want to be really clear about that. Now, you could go to university and still fulfill that yearning independently, but then is that going to create laziness when the demands on your time are so much that you can't actually be all in, right? Which is another attitude thing. You need the attitude of being all in. I really strongly believe that, because universities are filled with people who are there just half-heartedly. That doesn't really serve anybody, you know? It's going to happen. I'm not proposing a utopia world where only people who want to be there are going to be there, but just be realistic about it, that the more people who are all in, the more exciting it's going to be. And that's how you might want to pick the universities that you go to, because that'll help you prevent laziness also. Laziness will be imposed on you if you don't have these things in order. So let's just go through that quickly. Loss mentality, having the right attitude, or if you have loss mentality, then that's not a good reason to go to university. It pretty much nixes the whole thing. If you have the wrong attitude, or you're susceptible to the wrong attitudes of others, like we talked about, that's going to nix the whole project. If you're a person who wants to or keeps on zoning out of apps without doing something about it, no good reason to go to university there. And if you're yearning for something outside of university, that's going to put the kibosh on there as well. Let's check in on some comments here. And hey guys, thanks for all the thumbs up. Keep them coming. Let me know you're engaged. Keep the comments coming and discuss so that we are all on board here. So Mystic says, how much information or image can you stick into one station, or do you recommend? How much imagery do I recommend, and so forth. Also, do you go digital or paper with drawing? We're going to talk about that on the upcoming webinar. Go to magneticmemorymethod.com if you haven't already, /data to be registered. That's going to be more discussed in detail. So let's talk about the crazy part, right? I mentioned Steve Jobs as being a kind of influence on me about this. The first thing, and these are the reasons why you want to go to university, is that you're confident. You're confident that you are going to have everything that you need. All the resources you need are closer than you think. Even on your darkest days, even on the days when it feels like the challenge is too much, everything you need is always closer than you think. It's always right here in your brain. You just got to train your brain. Train your brain to see it. Train your brain to know that everything you need is always here. It's in the present moment. I'm recommending this week Stillness Speaks by Eckhart Tolle. Rereading it now. Beautiful, beautiful book to get yourself aligned with the truth, which is that now is the only moment, and you always have everything that you need in that moment. Have the confidence. That's part of the crazy. Is the confidence that you'll always have everything that you need to make it. And you will make it. Every single person can. Every single person can. And there's no, I don't have any gray areas here. I don't buy it. If you want to hypnotize yourself that you can't, well, sorry about that. But in any case, if you have the confidence, and you can create confidence anytime just by understanding the lazy part, just knowing that, just having these things realistically in your mind will help you have the confidence already. And then you want to be ready. You want to be all in. You want to absolutely have said yes to this. I am ready. And have that attitude in check. But the A here is not just the attitude, but it's also association skills. Know how your brain learns. Know how it learns. We're going to be talking about this in the Digital Amnesia Takedown. magneticmemorymethod.com/data for the free webinar, free ebook, free audiobook. Love to see you there. Be a lot of fun celebrating 5th year of this Magnetic Memory Method project, and I'm so happy that you're all here. Bad Boss says, yes, I'm confident I'll be good in university and be a top memory expert before I get there. Yeah, well, you can be a memory expert. And the truth of the memory stuff is only you can be the top memory expert, because you're the only person who can be you. You're the only person who can do that. And this is a huge, huge part of all this, is understanding you in the equation. So many people just don't realize that they're the only one who is them. Nobody else can be you. Like, look, I don't want to get into Mr. Rogers' neighborhood here or something, although maybe I do. You know, he was so good. I was so blessed as a young kid to have this constant daily message. It's you I like, you know? And he just was so profoundly aware that every person is special. Every person is so amazing. And they're amazing because they're the only ones who can be them. And there's so many people walking around who don't celebrate this, who are not understanding that there's only you. Now, that's not solipsism. That's not, you know, just fantasy that only one person exists. The world is real. It really, really is out there. But you're the only one who can experience it as you experience it. And you've only got so much time. And in fact, you only have one time. And that time is now. So you want to be you, right? Do you think that that might be in the why here? Well, yes, it is. But there's something else. You are the biggest part of this equation. And if nothing else comes out of this, there's only one memory, and it's your memory. And the quality of that memory is up to you. Your quality of memory, your experience of your memory is in your hands, because you're the only one who can take it into your hands. The science of memory is super, super important. The science of memory is just, there's no arguing about memory being the thing that you absolutely can take command of and control of if you just learn a couple of things about it and then you actually implement. There's really no wiggle room here. People who deny that memory works for them they're hypnotizing themselves, or deny that memory can work for them. They're hypnotizing themselves out of it. Chris says, hi, thank you for this. I'm from the United States. Chris, thank you for being here. I'm so glad to see you, and I'm really grateful for you saying hello. And I'm just, let me know how things are doing with you and your memory, and let's and your confidence in you, because we've got confidence and we've got, you know, being ready and being realistic about these memory issues, being all in and realistic. Realistic is something that a lot of people are uncomfortable with, but the power is in being realistic. All the power is being in realism, realist philosophy. If I were to become a philosopher, I would say I'm a realist philosopher. The world really is real, and there are natural laws that govern everything, and we can perceive a great deal of those natural laws, and because we can perceive them, we can shape them and shape ourselves to our benefit, which benefits everything. And we are the only ones who can do it individually, and we got to get together and help as many people as we can also do it individually, because that's what's going to make an omega point of improvement. So Christian says, I was inspiring people with the ideas of your guitar music memory innovations today. Very inspiring ideas. Well, thank you, Christian. That's great. Got the guitar right here. Music, so important. Music is so important. I highly recommend my podcast episodes with John McFedrin. I always say that in the plural, I'm sorry. There's a podcast episode with John. The reason why I say it in the plural is because he sat with me while doing some recording of other episodes. So that's why. Yeah, I have the perception that he's been a guest on more of them, but he's just been around. And John, great friend of me personally, of the magnetic memory method, and a great mnemonist in his own right, and a great thinker of music and memory. And it's really great. So, association skills, knowing how you learn, knowing how memory really, really works, that's going to be a great asset. And if you have that on your side, then university will be worth it. The other thing is a zeal. That's the Z here, or the Z. Having a zeal for knowledge itself, knowledge in and of itself, knowledge for the sake of knowledge, which is never really just for the sake of knowledge. It's for the pleasure that it creates. It's for the mastery that it creates. It's for the control that it creates. You know, William Burroughs, he always said, control seeks to control control. I don't know if you ever encountered William S. Burroughs in your reading. Crazy kind of dude, but Control seeks to control control. It can be a good thing though when you know that too. When you know that about control. Well, how do you get to know that about control? Well, you become a person of knowledge. You have a zeal for knowledge, and then eventually you'll encounter these ideas. As a realist philosopher, I feel very strongly, and I see the evidence very strongly, that there are only so many ideas under the sun. A great mentor to me, I had him as a professor at the European Graduate School, Manuel de Landa. He really boiled philosophy down to two questions. Do essences exist, or do essences not exist? The answer, if you put some real scientific scrutiny down to it, even if you just put common sense wisdom down to it, the answer is very, very clear. And then that's the beginning of philosophy. That's where philosophy begins. If you can just get those two questions sorted, then you enter the playground. After that, before that, you're not really doing philosophy. So have a zeal for knowledge. You'll encounter that. You'll pick your battle, and then the game is on, right? And it's just knowledge for its own sake and zeal, but it's never for its own sake, because it's creating pleasure. It's creating new avenues for exploration, which is a form of pleasure. And you know what? It might cause some uncertainty and so forth, but that's just part of the game. It's part of the game. It's part of life, and it's part of the zeal. It's part of the flavor, And who would want to be without that flavor? I don't know. This is one reason to go to university, is to get that flavor, to be exposed to people who are just crazy about the flavor of knowledge, and they are sacrificing so much of their lives to get it and to get more of it. So you want to find those professors. Find those professors. Find them. Be with them. And balance them, but be with them. Follow their recommendations. Try to become their research assistants. I was a research assistant of one of the most amazing professors in the world. I learned so many cool words from him. I read his books. He read a book, this is Ian Balfour at York University. He wrote a book about Northrop Frye, one of my favorite books in the world. Jaideep is here. Hi, Jaideep. I saw some comments coming in. I'll catch up with them in a minute, but thanks for being here. And I just, it wasn't enough to just go to his courses. I had to go to a couple of his courses, and it wasn't enough to just read his books, but I wound up being able to be his research assistant for a semester. I'll never forget that experience, and it opened me up to such a world of knowledge. And I still Google him every once in a while, and actually on the note-taking podcast at magneticmemorymethod.com, I found another professor that I had. This was a professor I had in my graduate years, Matthew Clark, giving an amazing talk on video. He's such a great speaker. Almost brings tears to my eyes to go and watch a professor that I had give an extended talk. None of this mushy, 18-minute, 12-minute stuff where everybody's raving about as if it's the new way of creating knowledge and becoming a person of knowledge. No, we need to go and sit, and we need to think, and we need to take notes in particular ways, and we need to expose ourselves to extended thought. We need to practice extended thought. We need to preserve the tradition of extended thought. And yeah, I'm crazy enough to think that I could probably make that happen for some people in order to create a world that isn't all twitchy and notification crazy. We want crazy for knowledge. We want crazy for knowledge that makes our lives better, makes the lives of everyone around us better, and then has the ripple effect, has the butterfly effect, so that the world continues getting better and better and better. But if governments are going to be ruled by Twitter, come on, people. We've got to do better than that. We've got to be better than that. And we've got to make sure that the people who are in governance and in sovereignty aren't twitchy. They are educated, and they're educated in traditional ways, ways that extend our ability to think critically, so that we're having the world that we want. We're having the world that is peaceful, that is filled with knowledge, that is filled with a zeal for knowledge. Anyway, the why is, of course, you, but it's also yearning. It was yearning also in the other one here, but it's yearning also for you. And it's yearning for knowledge in and of itself, yearning to give back to the world. It's yearning for you. It's yearning for yourself, for a particular version of yourself, the version of yourself that is better than you even imagine is possible, but that you are going to create. And you maybe are crazy in thinking you can create it, but only you can create it. Only you can create that better version of yourself. And above all, it's a yearning for critical thinking. It's a yearning for the ability to actually parse knowledge, to get things down to brass tacks, to know that there is right out there, and that right can be discovered. And that right might be contingent upon further evidence that proves what was right was actually wrong, but that while you were engaging in it as being right, you were as right as possible using the tools of analysis available to you, which are skepticism, which is the empirical method or scientific method, which is knowing that, you know, cause and effect must have a mechanism and that it must be observable. And if it isn't observable, it needs to at least be explainable, and that it must be explainable based on things that are, you know, at least somehow coherent amongst other people, you know, and that those other people are able to help verify and so forth. So, you know, this is where science can get into a kind of a gray area as well, because then woo-woo people can come and say, yeah, well, we've got all these things too, but they don't usually. But in any case, the whole point is that you've got a yearning for critical thinking, and that critical thinking, you're going to have a good attitude about it. You're going to just be a realist about all the things that you learn, and you're going to be able to filter out all the negative stuff and always be saying yes to the real, like to realism, to the realist stuff that's available to you at any time. So I'd highly recommend reading Manuel de Landa for that. He was so influential on me as a professor that I had, and just listening to him speak. You can watch some of the lectures that I watched on YouTube from Manuel de Landa. I was sitting in the room on some of those that are up there on YouTube, listening to him speak. And you know, even if you don't become a realist, even if you become more of an essentialist philosopher, well, I mean, we're not going to stamp that stuff out. It's important. It helps realist philosophy be there. But the point is if you can get yourself sorted so that you understand these things, then that's when philosophy begins. A lot of people see that as the end of philosophy, but that's where philosophy begins. So that's really all I had to say about the difference between being lazy versus crazy, and making sure that you are on board with one or the other, so that when you decide to go to university or go back to university as an adult, that you are on board with this, that you understand these things. Because loss mentality isn't going to help you. It's going to create laziness. Not having a good attitude isn't going to help you. It's going to create the laziness that crushes you. Not, you know, having the digital apps and devices controlled in your life and zoning out all the time isn't going to help you. It's going to make you lazy. And not having yearning, or not having the yearning that you have fulfilled, is going to make you lazy. It's going to force laziness on you, and it's going to be very hard to get out of it. Although, if you're a student now and you're suffering from the lazy, then this message hopefully will help you get that sorted. Then the craziness is having the confidence that you can actually do this, which means having abundance. It means not thinking in terms of a loss, but knowing you'll always come out on top, because you're there for the love of knowledge in and of itself, and you're there for the love of you, for you yourself, so that you can be a higher person who's able to contribute to the world. And that you have your association techniques in order, your memory techniques in order, and that you're absolutely realistic about them, and you know the science, you know why they work, and you know they work because you put them in order yourself. I can give you all the stories, I can give you all the testimonials, but you got to get yourself in the equation. You have to be involved. You have to be using these techniques for yourself and learning them and exploring them and implementing them. The good news is you can do it in the space of a half hour or an hour or so, or less, and you can really get started at a deep and profound level that will put you on a journey that you never stop, that you never end, and you'll be in it for life. You'll be hooked on it for life, and you will have an amazing tool that you can take anywhere you go. You can remember people's names. You know, I just met someone named Galen. It's a beautiful thing to remember that her name was Galen. I met someone named Stuart. I remember that his son's name is Oliver. His wife's name is Selena, or his partner. You know, it's just so amazing. It seems like a simple thing, but 99.9% of the people will never be able to do that in their lives. And then I can think back to all the things that can be thought back to, all of the books that have been read, all of the ideas that were there. I mean, it's been years since I read Nicomachean Ethics, and I remember it so well because I used the memory techniques, and then I went and sat in an exam and put it out there in the exam situation. But how did I pass? Because of the memory techniques. And I did it very, very calm and relaxed. I've seen this happen now for so many people. year after year, it's just grown and grown and grown and grown. And it's going to continue to keep growing and evolving. And I really appreciate everyone who's supporting it. And speaking of those people, let's check out our chat here and see what we got. So Chris says, how do you memorize many topics for a test that they can grab information, like 40 different topics? Well, we're going to be talking about that on my upcoming webinar, magneticmemorymethod.com/data. Please be there so that we can pick that up in more detail. And the short answer is make memory palaces and use them, and learn the magnetic memory method, because it's going to give you the ability to organize these palaces so that they're very targeted for the knowledge that you need. Michael says, hey Anthony, checking out the chat now. Fantastic life principles in this live. Loving it. Thank you, Michael. I always appreciate your voice and your engagement and your participation in the masterclass. Fantastic. Christian says, Burroughs, we were talking about William Burroughs before, in case you're just hopping on now. William Burroughs is a great writer with many great poetic verses and prose who encouraged us to exterminate all rational thought where visualization and creativity thrive. Yeah, but I think we need to be a little bit careful when we say that he encouraged us to exterminate all rational thought. I think that he's talking about exterminating the rational thought that's imposed upon us by sovereignty, by ideology, because that's not rational thought. So I'd love to know if you would agree with that distinction, because that's a great discussion to be had. But I think, and I really appreciate you making it, Christian, but I think that when he says exterminate all rational thought, he's not talking about rational thought, but he's talking about a kind of rational thought that is imposed externally from irrational forces, like sovereignty. And even sovereignty may have rational elements that are used irrationally, and that's where the control seeks to control thing comes from. And I would pepper on a bit of Foucault there, some Derrida, and so on. There's multiple ways of putting that together. Let's see here. Ivan says, can you repeat the name of the teacher you just mentioned? I was mentioning Manuel de Landa. So that's D-E-L-A-N-D-A. And wow, he's just great professor. One of my fondest memories are his teachings. Study his stuff well, read his books, watch his videos on YouTube. Check it out. You're going to love Manuel de Landa. He's a realist and really great. Mystic asks, how long will the webinar be, and is there a chat? Can you ask questions there? Yes, there's a live Q&A at the end of this webinar, magneticmemorymethod.com/data. Please be there for the digital amnesia takedown. It will be approximately 45 minutes to an hour, and the Q&A will be 30 minutes or so. And these things are a lot of fun. If you've never been on a proper teaching webinar, you're going to love it, and it is going to be great. Now, Christian says, exactly, it's about opening to creativity and not judging yourself and your best work. Thank you for that distinction. Russell's here. Russell from Denver, Colorado. Thanks for being here, Russell, and thanks for letting me know you're here. And Mystic asks about me being almost fluent with Chinese. That's an interesting question. Fluency is something that is a underdetermined, undefined word. And Mystic says, looking forward to the webinar, put it on my calendar too. By it, I assume you mean the webinar. And if you're just joining, having a free webinar next week, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/data for the dates, and look forward to seeing you there. You can register. Free audiobook, free PDF for people who attend, and I think you're going to find that material really valuable to help you get mental clarity. The book is called How to Keep Your Mind Sharp Even If You're 90. And it really does work, because I've tested these ideas with 90-year-olds who have been clients of mine over the years. So it works. Yeah, but the whole thing with fluency and Chinese, look, there's government fluency, which is in the European structure, C1 level or B1 or B2 or whatever. I've had really fascinating conversations about exactly how fluent I am in German, for example. And the tests that I've passed and the ones that I haven't passed, and exactly how the distance between B1 and B2 is just tremendous. Yet at the same time, I can have conversations, and I know slang and turns of phrase and East German things that people with C2 never even heard of. So it's not relative, but at the same time, you need to know what your goals are. And you need to determine your own fluency. So for my own goals, no, I'm not fully fluent in Chinese yet. And there's some things to be done, but I have little miniature goals, and I follow along with those goals. And so when I want to do certain things, like when I went to China the first time, I wanted to be able to propose to my wife, and I wanted to be able, before proposing to her, I wanted to be able to ask her father for permission in marriage and have chit chat during dinner. And so I sat down and I thought, how am I going to get this done? And then I just got it done. And the whole time I was in China, I was speaking Chinese. I went to C.R.A.Z.Y, Chinese Language Institute in Guilin, sat with a teacher, and I'll never forget, she's saying, "Are you sure you only studied this for 3 months?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure. I know. I remember the day that I started." And so that fluency that I achieved was a kind of fluency that was defined by the only person who can define it, which is the person doing it, right? So people get mixed up with what fluency is, and I think that all the language learning experts and gurus would agree with this, that fluency is something that you do. Fluency is something that you experience, and you do it realistically based on your goals. And then there's like mastery, and then there's textbook mastery, and there's government exam mastery, and then there's daily, like, can I speak with people, and can they understand me, and do I understand them mastery? Like Chinese, every chance I get, there's lots of people here who speak Chinese, I speak Chinese with them. And when I've understood them and they've understood me, is it fluency, quote unquote fluency? Well, according to a government exam, no. But in that moment, we're communicating. We're communicating about what needs to be communicated and what I want to communicate in that moment. That's fluency to me. And that's fluency to them, because we communicated. And not only that, but I've got a little thing going on in my mind, and it's just like, ooh, I wish I could have said this. And then I say to my wife, how can I say this? And then she tells me, and then I memorize it. So fluency is really like a boat. And you make the boat yourself, and you get the boat into water, and then you start paddling the boat, right? And you keep going, and the boat might spring some holes every once in a while, and some water starts leaking through. So you figure out how to patch it, and then you put that patch in there, and you make sure that patch stays, right? And that patch might spring out later again, but you've got memory techniques to help you with that. If you want to use them, if you want to learn how to use them, and you will be able to patch that thing in there so it'll never pop out again, if you want to. And then you define fluency as you go, and then fluency is like these little islands. And you land at an island, and sometimes that island will be really big, and you explore it and you extend your understanding, and sometimes you'll land on an island that's really, really small, and you'll be like, heck, I can see all ends of this island. I don't want to stay here too long. So you get on the boat again, and then you go. Or you can think of fluency as a highway where your, the engine builds itself out of the fuel. So grammar is like an engine, let's say, and the vocabulary is like the fuel that builds the engine. And you need, actually, vocabulary to understand the engine. And so you're fueling it, and you're doing both. You're building the engine, and then in order to actually get more vocabulary, you have to get on the highway of fluency, and you have to stop at different gas stations and pump up. So Adel asks, you are also learning the Chinese, well, they're not kanji, but henzi. Yes, I am. And actually, I've figured out how to apply the magnetic memory method flawlessly to them. So that, flawlessly, I'm going to say that with the fact is you got to use the techniques, but in my experiments, I actually can memorize how to draw the characters, recognize them by sight, of course, if you can draw them, how to know exactly what the pinyin is for them, and the correct tones, and to be able to do about 1 every 5 minutes. So, and have 100% accuracy 24 hours later. And Mystic says, do you draw them in your mind? I'm going to be putting a course together about how to do it. People who are in the Magnetic Memory Method Mastermind, they have some training on this already. And this is one of the benefits of being in the Magnetic Memory Method Mastermind, which is different than the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. So if you want, like, the initial stages of this course, and so that you can go and reproduce this. There's no point in being in the mastermind if you don't know the magnetic memory method anyway, because it's for people who use the magnetic memory method. But the masterclass is great. Start there. If you want to be in the mastermind, that's where the initial stages of the Hansa memory technique is. It just works beautifully, but you also need to know the magnetic memory method, because there are certain organizational principles that will guide the choice of which ones that you use, and this is incredible. Mystic says, this is the only way I could imagine learning with the magnetic memory method, drawing them in your mind using radicals and mnemonics. Well, I mean, I could do that as well, but I don't think it's going to work nearly as well as what I came up with, in order to nail down all the elements so that the tones are also involved in there, and to be able to draw them. If you draw them in your mind, you're not going to have nearly as good of skill as what you need to be able to draw them with your hand. And I'll never forget, you know, when I passed April's test, my wife's test, I said, take a picture and send it to your parents. And she sent it to the parents, and they're just like, right on, keep going, because I just drew them beautifully. Now the next step, of course, is to actually be using the new vocabulary, doing some sort of sentence writing and so forth. But this is all well known as part of language learning. There's nothing surprising about that. The only surprising thing is how few people actually do it. We'd have way more fluent people if they would just do these things. So, and again, fluency is something that we all need to define for ourselves at some level. And if we want to submit, as I've done with German, to tests and exams and so forth, kann man machen. Kein Problem. It's fully possible to do whatever fluency it is that you want to do, but you've got to be realistic. And it all comes back to this. We could say the same thing that we said about university for developing fluency. If you go in with a loss mentality, right, you're setting yourself up to fail. You're creating laziness. You're going to be lazy about language learning, because you're like, oh, well, I don't have enough time. Oh, I don't have enough this. I don't have enough that. That's going to create laziness. It's never going to create that crazy, beautiful energy that you need to drive the language learning activity. And if your attitude is wrong, right, you're just setting yourself up to fail. And if you're zoning out in apps, if you're zoning out in devices, you're stacking the chips against you instead of in your favor. And if you're actually yearning to do something else with your time, you're also putting yourself at a disadvantage, a huge disadvantage. But if you're crazy about getting that language in your mind, right, and you're confident that you can do it because you know the science of memory, you know that language learning has nothing else to it other than the big five of language learning, which is reading, writing, speaking, listening, and letting those things fuel your memory, and letting memory feed those things, so you get a perfect circle. If you just get that in order, how can you lose? You just have an energy creating machine, right? But you gotta be realistic about it, which means that you show up and you actually do these things, right? You gotta be ready, which is the R here, realistic and ready, right? Which just means you're all in, saying yes. And you have to have the associations, and you have to have attitude of association, which is knowing how your brain works, having memory techniques, right? And then you have to have the zeal for language learning, the zeal for the language itself, the zeal for memory, the zeal for speaking, for reading, for writing, for listening. Oh man, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it is, you've got it. And it is this crazy, crazy, beautiful feeling. And then you have to have you in the equation, the yearning for you being fluent. Only you can do it. No one else can do any of these things for you. So if you want to learn a language, how else can it be done other than you putting yourself into the equation? All the science is there. The scientific demonstration is there. People are learning languages all the time, left, right, and center. People are learning memory techniques all the time, left, right, and center. They're breaking new records almost every year. Almost every year. Why? Because it's possible for any person to do it. Come to the art of memory. It'll never, ever fail you. It's impossible for it to fail you. That's the difference here. And that's what we've got to say today with each other. I really enjoyed everybody being here. One last time, if you want to be on my Digital Amnesia Takedown live webinar, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/data. This has been like a really fun and lovely seminar, and a seminar, Sunday satsang, whatever you want to call it. I think it's just been great, and I want to make another shout out to John here. 1,000 advanced graduate record exam words. Congratulations, John. That's just wonderful. 12 memory palaces for 1,000 words. Oh man, I'm not a man given to envy, but I just love to be able to pop into other people's minds and see what their memory palaces are like. It'd be so extraordinary. It'd be so much fun. And he got over the obstacle. He says he's addicted to location-based memory now and working towards bigger and better ways of using it. And they're always there. They're always there. So if you understand these distinctions, you get your thoughts in order, get your attitude in order, you'll never be lazy for learning. You'll never be lazy for university. You'll always be on. You'll be switched on. And you'll be, I dare say, magnetic. And we need more magnetic people in the world. People who are just capable of bringing information rapidly into their minds, encoding it, right? It's the cure. The cure. We'll be talking about the cure on the Digital Amnesia Takedown at magneticmemorymethod.com/data. I really look forward to seeing you there. The other thing I would say before we go about being magnetic is that you also know how to repel the information that doesn't matter, right? Which is part of that yearning, right? Do you have your yearning in order? Make sure that you're actually memorizing the information that matters, because if you don't need it, if you don't want it, all the memory techniques in the world they'll help you. They will help you. But for what end? Golden handcuffs, right? They call it slave's luck when you work for years and years and years to get in a job you never really wanted, right? To succeed at something you don't really want to do. People do this all the time to themselves. It's sad, it's horrifying, and it's completely unnecessary when you understand these distinctions. So I want to thank everybody who spent their time with me today. I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate you supporting this work that I do. If you haven't heard the latest podcast episodes, make sure you come to magneticmemorymethod.com, download them, make a little audiobook for yourself out of them, dive in. There's a video course there for you, all kinds of things. And I invite you one last time to my free webinar on the Digital Amnesia Takedown. Go to magneticmemorymethod.com/data, and we'll see you there, giving you a free ebook and a free audiobook called How to Keep Your Mind Sharp, even if you're 90. So even if you're 90, be on that call, be there live, be there, and you will receive. And celebrating the 5th anniversary of this month. Isn't this amazing? Isn't this incredible? Thank you all, everybody, for your support. Thank you for being here today on this call. And until we have a chance to speak again, if you're not already magnetic, get yourself magnetic. And if you're already on the path, keep magnetic. Take care. Bye-bye.